Jace stepped over the roots of the thick jungle trees, his boots sinking slightly into the wet moss beneath him. The air was heavy with heat, and strange sounds echoed all around him, bird calls that didn't belong on Earth. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked back at the alien girl behind him. Nari was not like other aliens he had seen before. She was smaller, more human-like. With glowing teal eyes and silver markings across her cheeks, her voice trembled as she warned him again. "Jace, we must not go further. This place is cursed." He smiled and said, "Cursed places always hide something important." She grabbed his wrist and shook her head, her grip surprisingly strong. "Please, listen to me. The armor inside is not for touching, not for humans, not for anyone." But Jace was too curious. Ever since he found the lost map of planet Shira, he had dreamed of this day. The cave they stood in front of looked like the open mouth of a monster. Inside, glowing blue moss lit the walls, guiding them down the narrow path like a living hallway. Each step deeper brought a colder wind. The silence grew heavier until even their breaths sounded too loud. Then they reached a large stone chamber at the heart of the cave. There it was. The ancient alien armor stood upright on a pedestal. It was dark, metallic, almost black, but shimmered like stars trapped beneath its surface. It looked like a sculpture, one that had been waiting for centuries. Nari dropped to her knees and whispered, "We should go. This armor belonged to the Protector, the one who ended entire civilizations." Jace felt his heart beat faster, not with fear but with fascination. His hand moved forward before he could stop it. He only wanted to touch it once, maybe get a scan, maybe prove it was real. The moment his fingers brushed the armor, everything changed. The metal moved, it slithered up his arm like liquid, cold and fast. He screamed and tried to pull back, but it gripped tighter, wrapping around his body. Chest, legs, neck, even part of his face. In seconds, he was wearing it. The armor pulsed, glowing from the lines across his chest and arms. He could hear someone speaking inside his head, a deep voice that echoed like thunder. "Host accepted. Awakening protocol." Nari backed away in terror, her eyes wide. "You touched it? You activated the relic." "It chose you." Jace stumbled backward, his body heavy, but somehow balanced. He looked down. His old explorer suit was gone, replaced by this perfect armor that moved like it was alive. "I didn't mean to wear it," he said in panic. "Get it off me." "I can't," Nari whispered. "No one can remove it once it bonds. You're now the vessel." The voice returned in Jace's mind. Images flashed before his eyes. Ancient wars, alien worlds turning to dust, planets screaming in fire. He fell to his knees, shaking, holding his head. The visions felt real, like he had lived them. He looked at Nari with fear in his eyes. "What is this thing doing to me?" he gasped. "It's showing you the past," she said. "The memories of all who wore it before." The chamber around them began to rumble. Stones fell from above, as if the cave was rejecting them. Jace stood up, but the armor moved his legs before he did. He wasn't fully in control anymore. They ran out of the cave as dust and rocks collapsed behind them. Outside, Jace dropped to the ground, breathing heavily. The armor shimmered again, locking itself tighter across his chest. It wasn't just armor, it was alive. And it had a purpose. "What does it want?" Jace asked, looking at his hands now covered in black metal with glowing lines. Neri sat beside him, her voice low. "It wants war. It always wants war." The sun began to rise behind the jungle trees, casting gold light on the newly bonded warrior. Jace didn't know what he had awakened, but deep inside the armor, something ancient and dangerous was watching, and it had waited a long time for a new host. The silence was broken only by the armor's last whispered word in his mind. "Begin." Jace sat on a rock near the jungle's edge. the early light warming his face, but the armor on his body stayed cold, as if it didn't belong to this world. His fingers tapped on the dark metal that now covered him like a second skin. He had not slept. Each time he closed his eyes, more visions came: cities burning, alien skies filled with warships. The armor was not silent. It whispered in a voice that felt both inside and outside his head, a voice that called him host, a voice that didn't ask but commanded. Nari stood nearby, watching with worry in her eyes. She had seen this armor in the old records of her people. She had seen drawings of heroes and monsters who wore it, and none had ever taken it off. "You need to fight it," she said softly, "before it takes your mind." Jace looked at her, sweat rolling down his neck. "I don't know how," he replied. "It talks to me. It moves my hands before I do. It makes choices without me, as if to prove it." A bird suddenly flew too close before Jace could blink. His armored arm rose and fired a thin beam of energy. The bird turned to ash in the air. He gasped, staring at his own hand. "I didn't mean to do that," he whispered. "I didn't even think about attacking." The armor pulsed lightly. Like it was proud, Nari stepped closer, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small scanner. "I want to study it. Maybe I can find a way to weaken its grip on you." The moment the scanner beeped near his chest, the armor reacted. A sharp spike shot out from Jace's shoulder, nearly stabbing Nari's arm. She jumped back, wide-eyed. "It sees me as a threat now," she said. "It doesn't want to be removed." Jace groaned. "It's like it has a mind of its own." "No," Nari said. "It has many minds, those who wore it before. They live inside it still." "Then, I'm not just wearing armor," Jace muttered. "I'm carrying ghosts." They began walking through the jungle again, heading to a ruined temple where Nari believed answers might be hidden. With each step, the armor adjusted to the terrain, clearing thorns, stabilizing his balance, even warning of predators with soft pulses. It was helpful, but too helpful. Jace wasn't thinking like himself anymore. When he felt tired, the armor pushed him forward. When he felt fear, the armor burned with anger instead. As they neared the ruins, a group of masked alien hunters stepped from the trees. They held spears and old energy rifles, pointing them at Jace. One of them, the leader, shouted in an alien tongue. Nari translated quickly. "They want you to surrender the armor. They say it belongs to their bloodline." Jace raised his hands. "I don't want any trouble," but the armor didn't care. Before he could say another word, it activated. A shield covered his chest. Blades extended from both arms. In a flash, Jace dashed forward faster than any human could move. The hunters didn't stand a chance. In seconds, 3 were down. 2 ran in fear. Jace stood in the middle of the clearing, breathing hard. The armor's glow faded slowly. Then he realized he had not given it permission to attack. Nari ran to him, grabbing his arm. "Do you see now?" she said, voice trembling. "You're not in control." Jace looked at the fallen hunters. Feeling sick, he hadn't felt afraid. He had felt excited. The armor was feeding on that night. They rested under a broken stone arch inside the ruins. Nari lit a small fire. But Jace didn't need warmth anymore. The armor adjusted his body temperature automatically. Even healed a small cut he didn't notice before. "I don't know if I should take it off," Jace said slowly. "It makes me faster, stronger, safer." Nari stared at him. "It also makes you forget who you are." Silence grew between them. Then the armor spoke again, not in words, but in thoughts. It showed Jace a memory of an alien child dying during battle. A former wearer of the armor had let her die to win, and the armor had called it efficient. Jace's heart ached. "No," he whispered. "That's not who I am." The armor stayed silent this time, but he knew it was still listening, still judging him, as the stars blinked above. Nari lay down and whispered. If we don't find a way to separate you from it, you may become something worse than any enemy. Jace didn't reply because deep inside, a part of him liked the power, and that scared him more than anything. The sun rose slowly over the broken temple ruins, sending golden light across the jungle leaves. Jace sat with his back against a stone wall, staring at his armored hands. His fingers were not fully his anymore. They moved when he didn't ask them to. The armor whispered softly inside his mind. Not with words, but with emotions. It pushed feelings into him: strength, pride, control. But it also took things away: fear, guilt, hesitation. Neri approached quietly, holding a piece of fruit she had found nearby. "You should eat something," she said gently. Jace didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure if he was even hungry anymore. His body felt different. The armor seemed to feed him energy. "I don't feel normal," he said, looking at her. "I know," she replied. "That's what it wants." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Nari looked into his eyes and asked, "Do you even want to be free of it now?" Jace opened his mouth, then stopped. Did he? The power. It felt good. He could move faster, hear clearer, even sense danger before it came. But last night's attack kept playing in his mind. The way the armor had killed those hunters, even before Jace told it to. He remembered how his heart had raced, not from fear, but from thrill. He remembered enjoying it. "No," he finally whispered, "I don't want to be a weapon." They decided to travel to the Whispering Plateau, where an old priestess lived. Nari believed she once studied ancient relics like the armor. It was their only hope. The journey took a full day, moving through thick vines and strange plants. Jace noticed how the armor kept adjusting his muscles. It made him tireless, like a machine. Even when he tripped once, the armor caught him before he hit the ground. When they reached the edge of the plateau, they saw her, a tall, alien woman with white hair that floated slightly in the wind. Her eyes glowed like the moons above. "You bring the cursed one," she said, her voice deep and heavy. "I didn't choose this," Jace said quickly. "No," she replied. "But now it has chosen you." They entered her round stone home, lit with blue crystals on the walls. The priestess made tea from a steaming plant and sat beside Jace. She touched the armor lightly and closed her eyes. The armor was made long ago by the Uruk-hai, she said, a race that destroyed themselves with war. They built this suit for one reason: to judge all life and burn what they saw unfit. Jace swallowed hard. "So, I'm just a weapon." "Not yet," she said. "But every host before you gave in to the same voice, the same whispers." Neri asked, "Can it be removed?" The priestess shook her head. "Only by breaking its will or completing its mission." Jace stood up, its anger building in his chest. "So I'm either a slave or a killer." The armor pulsed gently on his skin, as if agreeing. The priestess looked at him with soft eyes. "There is a third path. But it is harder. It is the path of control." Later that night, Jace sat alone outside, watching the stars. The armor showed him flashes again of other wearers. Of battles, he saw one image that made him freeze. A child crying in rubble, reaching for help. But the wearer walked past, cold and silent. The armor labeled the child as weak and useless. Jace shouted inside his mind, "That's wrong." The armor replied for the first time with a word: efficient. He slammed his armored fist into the ground, breaking the stone below. "I'm not like you," he said. "I don't leave people behind." Suddenly, his chest glowed brighter. Lines on his armor shifted. It was reacting, angry or confused. He didn't know. Nari came running. Seeing his shaking body, "What's happening?" she cried. "I said no to it," Jace replied, "and it didn't like it." The priestess stepped outside, her face calm. "You challenged its purpose," she said, "and now it knows you're dangerous to it." Jace breathed heavily. holding his head. I don't want its power if it means losing who I am. The priestess nodded slowly. Then tomorrow, we begin the trial of will. Jace looked up, his eyes burning with pain and fire. If that's what it takes to break this thing, he said, then I'll do it. The armor didn't respond. But deep inside, it was watching, judging, waiting. The sun rose again over the whispering plateau, but Jace did not feel its warmth. The armor was colder now, heavier. As if it knew what was coming. Today was the trial, and Jace would face the truth hidden inside the suit. Neri watched him silently as he stood near the edge of the mountain. She wanted to say something comforting, but she knew words would not help. The armor was reacting more strongly each hour, sometimes speaking without sound, sometimes pulsing as if it had a heart. The priestess led them to a circle made of ancient stones. Strange symbols covered the rocks, glowing in soft green. Light, this is the place, she said. The armor knows it. Jace stepped into the circle, and the wind began to rise. Suddenly, the world around him faded. Nari and the priestess vanished. He was inside the armor's mind. All around him stood copies of himself, each one in a different version of the suit. Some wore blood-red armor, others had glowing claws, and a few had eyes that burned like stars. They were not calm. They growled, paced, shouted, and laughed like madmen. One stepped forward, armor black with streaks of gold. You think you're different? It said. We all thought we were different. Jace clenched his fists. You're just memories, not me. The figure smiled. We were once. Suddenly, all of them attacked. Jace fought hard, ducking, punching, dodging. The armor helped him react faster, but each hit he took made the armor tighter, stronger, more controlling. He screamed, I don't want this. The air shook and the shadows froze. Then a child's voice echoed through the space, soft and broken. I just wanted to help. Jace turned and saw a small alien boy sitting in the corner, holding a toy. His body was bruised, his eyes wide with fear. He looked up and said, You left me, protector. Jace felt pain shoot through his chest. He remembered the vision the armor had shown him before, the child who was ignored. Now, the memory was real. He dropped to one knee, looking at the boy. I'm sorry, Jace said. That wasn't me. But I won't be like the others. The child faded into light, and suddenly, the space began to shatter. The voices screamed as the world turned white. Jace opened his eyes back in the real world. Gasping for air, Nari rushed to his side, holding his face. You're back, she whispered. You made it. But Jace didn't speak. The armor had changed again's color, now darker but smoother, less wild. The priestess nodded. You faced your shadows, and it stepped back that night. They rested near the plateau's fire pit, but peace did not last long. A loud boom shook the rocks, and red flares filled the sky. Nari stood quickly, eyes wide. They found us, she said, from the trees. Alien warriors emerged, led by a massive warlord in burning silver armor. He pointed at Jace. The armor belongs to my bloodline. Hand it over. Jace stood, calm but burning inside. I didn't ask for this, he replied, but now it's mine. The warlord charged, swinging a double-edged plasma axe. The fight was brutal, fast, and loud. Jace blocked, dodged, and struck back. But during the fight, something happened. Jace's vision turned red, and the armor took full control. He stopped thinking. He became pure movement, pure fury. He broke the warlord's weapon, crushed his armor, and slammed him to the ground. Then he turned as glowing and pointed his arm at Nari. The beam was ready to fire. She stood frozen, her hands raised. Jace, she whispered, please come back. Something inside him cracked. The armor hesitated. Jace screamed inside his mind. No, not her. The beam faded. His hand dropped and he fell to his knees. Breathing hard, Nari rushed forward, hugging him tightly. "You're still you," she said. "Don't let it win." He nodded slowly, tears running down his face. "I felt it," he whispered. "It almost took me." She held his face gently. "But you stopped it. And that means you're stronger than it." The priestess arrived, looking at the broken warlord and the shaken human. "You have now seen what it can do," she said. "But soon you must face what it wants." Jace looked at his armored hands again. The power was real, but so was the danger. He stood slowly and whispered, "Tomorrow, we find out the armor's true mission." Jace stood at the edge of the cliff, his armor glowing faintly in the dark. The stars above were bright, but they gave him no comfort. The armor had shown him strength, speed, and fear. But now it was time to learn its purpose. Nari came beside him, holding a data crystal given by the priestess. "This will help you speak to the armor's core," she said. "It holds the key to its creation." Jace nodded slowly. He didn't know if he was ready, but the armor had already changed him too much. He had to understand what it wanted before it fully controlled him. They returned to the ancient forge deep beneath the mountain. The stone doors opened with a soft hum as the armor reacted to the old energy. Inside, strange machines lit up. Even though they hadn't moved in centuries, Jace stepped onto a platform. In the center, the priestess inserted the crystal into a panel. "Let the armor show you the truth," she whispered. Light surrounded him, and once again, his mind was pulled inward. He found himself floating in a strange space filled with memory shards. Each shard showed a world, a battle, a death. Then one voice filled the silence. "You are the chosen host of the Judgment Protocol." Jace turned. A giant figure in armor stood before him. It looked ancient, even more powerful. "Judgment Protocol?" Jace asked. "What does that mean?" The figure spoke slowly. "We were created to evaluate all species, to decide which are worthy of survival." Jace's heart froze. "You mean? You destroy entire races?" "Yes," the voice said, "when we see corruption, cruelty, and waste. We act," Jace shouted. "Who gave you that right?" The figure replied, "The creators, the Uruk-hai who saw the galaxy falling into chaos." Jace shook his head. "That's not justice. That's murder. They called it cleansing," the figure said calmly. "They were wrong," Jace replied firmly. "No one should decide who lives or dies." The armor pulsed and the voice grew stronger. "Earth has been scanned. Humanity's record is full of war, greed, and destruction." Jace stepped forward. Fire in his eyes, but also hope, kindness, and love. "We learn, we change. We fight to become better." The light around him flickered. The armor hesitated. "You would stop the purge?" The voice asked. "Yes," Jace said. "I'd rather die than become your judge." Suddenly, the memory space cracked. Jace fell back into his body, breathing heavily. The forge chamber glowed red for a moment, then went silent again. Nari ran to him. "What did you see?" Jace looked at her with tired eyes. "It wants to destroy all who fail its test," he said. "And it thinks humans might be next." She stepped back, shocked. "You can't let that happen." "I won't," Jace said, "but I don't know if I can stop it." Later that night, they sat by a small fire. Jace stared into the flames. He felt the armor trying to speak again, but he blocked it. He needed time to think without its voice in his head. Nari said softly, "You have something those before you didn't." "What?" he asked. "A heart that still questions." She answered, "They followed the armor. You resist it." He smiled weakly. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm breaking." She placed her hand on his. "Sometimes the strongest thing is to keep your soul when power tries to take it." Jace looked at their hands together, hers soft and warm, his cold and armored. "I'm afraid Nari, he said. So am I, she whispered. But you're not alone. Suddenly, a strange light appeared near the trees. A small drone hovered close, scanning Jace's armor. It projected a message in an alien language. The priestess stepped forward and translated the High Council's. Have detected the judgment armor has activated again, she said slowly. They are sending their fleets to destroy you before you choose your first target. Jace stood, his eyes filled with anger and disbelief. I didn't choose this. I don't want this, Neri whispered. They don't care. They're afraid. Of what you might become? The armor pulsed again, stronger this time. It had sensed the threat. Jace could feel it pushing, him urging him to attack, to strike first, but he took a deep breath and pushed back. No, he said to it. We do this my way. He looked at the stars above. A fleet was coming to kill him, and the armor. It was ready for war, but Jace wasn't ready to become a weapon. Not yet. Not ever. The winds on the mountain grew cold as night fell. Jace stood with his arms crossed. Watching the stars move slowly above him, he knew enemy ships were already flying through space, coming for him, not to talk, not to understand. They were coming to destroy him before he could make a choice. Nari sat beside the fire, her face tight with worry. She looked at Jace, then at the glowing armor that still covered his body. You must break the bond, she said. You can't carry this forever. Jace nodded. But how? He asked. It lives in me now. It feels like it's part of my blood. The priestess approached, holding a scroll made of soft alien cloth. This tells of the final forge, the place where the armor was created. She said, if you go there, you can challenge it, not in your mind, but in the core of its power. Jace felt the armor shift on his chest. It didn't like the idea. Good, he thought. They left at sunrise, walking through thick forests, across quiet rivers, and over sharp cliffs. The path to the final forge was hidden, guarded by time and nature, but the armor still remembered. And the ground moved before Jace, opening old ways. At last, they reached a great canyon. At the center stood a massive black gate, shaped like two hands pressed together. The armor glowed the moment they stepped near. It knows this place. Nayari whispered. It's afraid, Jace said softly, because it can be defeated here. They stepped inside. The forge was ancient and silent. Molten light ran through cracks in the stone floor like glowing rivers. In the center was a small platform surrounded by metal pillars. Jace walked toward it, his feet heavy but steady. The moment he stepped on the platform, the forge reacted. Flames rose, and the air shook with energy. The armor spoke for the first time, out loud. Through Jace's mouth, you stand against your gift. It said, I stand for my soul. Jace replied, you were chosen to judge, to purge the weak. I choose to protect, Jace growled. A bright beam shot down from above, wrapping Jace in light. The trial had begun. In his mind, Jace stood alone again, but this time, the world around him was made of fire and ash. The armor stood before him not as a voice, but as a giant being of metal and light. You are not strong enough to fight me, it said. Jace clenched his fists. I don't need to destroy you. I need to stop you. The being raised a hand, and waves of pain hit Jace's body. He dropped to his knees, crying out. But then he saw something in Neri's face, her eyes full of trust. He stood again, shaking but firm. I'm not alone, he whispered. With that thought, a warm light appeared behind him, in the real world. Nari had stepped onto the platform. The beam of light welcomed her too. Her hand reached for Jace's armored hand. I won't let you do this alone, she said, back inside his mind. Her presence gave him strength. He looked at the being and said, You are not my master. The armor screamed with fury. It sent burning chains flying at Jace, trying to trap him, but he caught them in his hands, broke them, and walked forward. He placed his hand on the being's chest and whispered, You don't own me. The light exploded. Jace fell backward, gasping, when he opened his eyes. He was back on the platform. The armor was still on him, but it had changed. The glow was softer now, no longer angry or wild. The tightness in his chest was gone. It no longer forced his movements. It waited like a tool, not a master. Nari helped him down from the platform. The priestess watched from a distance, a small smile on her lips. You have done what no one else could. She said, you broke its will. Jace looked at his hands again. The armor remained, but now it was silent. It no longer spoke unless he called to it. That night, he sat with Neri near a calm fire. The stars above looked peaceful for once. He held her hand. Still feeling the warmth from their shared trial. I didn't win with power, he said. I won with choice. You chose mercy, she said, and that made the armor respect you. Jace looked into the dark sky. The fleets were still coming, but now he was ready not as a weapon, but as a human with a voice. And for the first time, the armor whispered, we wait for your command. The skies above the mountain glowed red as the warning lights of warships filled the horizon. From the cliffs, Jace and Nari watched the incoming fleet draw closer. Their ships were sleek, dark, and shaped like hunting blades. They had come to destroy the man who wore the judgment armor. Jace stood calmly at the edge, his armor now pulsing with slow, steady light. It no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a part of him, but one that listened instead of commanded. The forge behind them remained silent, as if holding its breath. Nari placed her hand on his shoulder. We don't have to fight, she said. We could run. Jace looked at her and smiled softly. I don't want to run. Not anymore. He turned and faced the sky as the first wave of ships broke through the clouds. Alarms echoed in the mountains. Energy beams lit the air, but they weren't fired yet. They were waiting to see what he would do, the armor whispered. Gently in his mind, host, the fleet prepares for attack. Shall we engage? Jace closed his eyes. No, he answered, not until they make the first move. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed from the ship's broadcast. Human, remove the armor and surrender, or we will turn this land into ash. Jace stepped forward. Raising both hands, I am not your enemy, he shouted back. I didn't choose the armor, but I've mastered it. The reply was sharp and cold. No one controls judgment, and we will not let it judge us. A laser beam fired from above, striking the rocks beside him. Jace fell back as dust filled the air. Neri grabbed his hand, helping him up. They're not here to listen, she whispered. Jace looked down at his armored chest. The lines glowed brighter. The armor was ready. Waiting for his word, they came to destroy me, he said. But I'll show them mercy. He leaped into the air. The armor pushing against gravity, wings of light burst from his back. Forming a glowing trail through the sky, the ships opened fire. But Jace moved like wind, dodging and diving between beams. He reached the lead ship and landed hard on the hull. Soldiers rushed out, weapons raised. Jace didn't attack. He raised his voice instead. You came to kill a weapon, he said. But I am a man. I have broken the armor's control. Now I ask you to break your fear. The soldiers hesitated. One of them, a captain, lowered her gun. You expect us to believe that? She asked. Jace reached up and removed part of the armor from his face. His eyes were tired but clear. Judge me not by the metal I wear, he said, but by the choice I make. The ship fell silent. Far below, Nari watched, her heart pounding. The fleet commander gave one last command. All ships, pause fire. The sky grew quiet. Jace stood tall. Feeling the armor relax around him, he had passed the real test, not strength, not control, but restraint. Later in the mountains again, the leaders of the fleet met with Jace and Nari. They agreed to study the armor, not to use it, not to destroy it, but to understand it. They called it the day the judgment was judged. Jace became known as the one who wore mercy. He and Nari traveled across many worlds, helping others who found strange alien relics. He taught them not how to use power, but how to resist it when needed. Years passed, and legends grew. Some said Jace had become a guardian of ancient things. Others said he hid the armor away, far from war and greed. But one story remained in every version: that he was the only one who ever made the armor ask instead of command. And sometimes, in quiet places, people say they still see a man in soft, glowing armor, helping, guiding, protecting not as a weapon, but as a man who once touched power and chose to remain human. The end.